first talk at the Amman Design Stage. I'd like to introduce Alia Saraqbi and Lauren Alexander from Foundland Collective. They're going to be presenting their projects under the title of the talk, Mapping Intimacies in Times of Conflict. One of their projects, which they'll be talking about, Groundplan drawings, is showing at the Handle exhibition on the other side. Just to tell, can you hear me well? The talk's going to be in English, and I'm just going to introduce Foundland Collective. It was formed in 2009 by Lauren and Alia. It's based between Amsterdam and Cairo. The collective critically reflects upon what it means to produce politically engaged decolonial storytelling from the position as non-Western artists that are working between Europe and the Middle East. So I'll hand it over to Alia and Lauren. Thank you.
Hello. Yeah. Thank you, Mona, for the introduction, and thanks for everybody for being here this evening. We're going to show you some slides and talk a little bit about a couple of our projects. You have to imagine that the slides are not squashed at the moment. I'm struggling with squashed slides. So, as Mona said, we are Foundland Collective. My name is Lauren Alexander. Ralia Al-Shakbi next to me. We are based between Amsterdam and Cairo. Originally, I'm from South Africa, and Ralia is from Damascus in Syria. So we both have a background in graphic design, and we are currently both teaching in Cairo and in the Netherlands. And for the past 10 years as Foundland Collective, we have aimed to develop a practice that prioritizes analytical and unconventional research methods to understand, interpret, and map complex events that are happening around us. We aim to provide alternatives, juxtapose, and question the types of storytelling that we see in news media. Since 2011, our attention has turned to the situation in Syria and how narratives of conflict are being told. We just will take you through a couple of examples of some of our work. This first one is called Friday Table, and it is a mapping on a tablecloth showing a remembered family seating of a typical Friday lunchtime ceremony in Damascus. The next one is a close-up of the Friday table. So the graphics on the table show the details of movement of one family from Syria around the world through various generations of diasporic movement. The next one is called Extended Borders, and it is an installation of ping pong balls, and on the ping pong balls are drawings, and on each ball is inscribed with personal locations shared by refugees on social media during their migration journey. The ping pong balls refer to protest methods which we saw in Damascus in 2011. This is called Failed Futures, and it's an installation table. What you see looks like fictional constellations of political boundaries or countries, so they look like they are country boundaries, but actually they are territories which we've extracted from media maps which we collected between 2011 and 2015. This project is called The New World, Episode 1, and it is a map which collages visuals which we extracted from an archive, and the archive is the largest Arab American archive called the Elixir NAF Collection, and it depicts the journey of a singing couple showing their trip across the diaspora and how their songs traveled with them as they moved. In this variation of The New World, this is another mapping project with visuals and photographs. You see collaged photographs which are sculpted into glass layers in a vertical form. So apologies, you can't see those very clearly, but you can see them very well on our website, foundland.info. Okay, Ralia.
Okay. So we're going to talk really in details about the project that we are showing here at Amman Design Week. We have we had the opportunity to actually dwell into more a deeper or present a new presentation of this kind of collection that we've been busy collecting since 2014. This project started by asking a group of friends. Actually, most of them are Syrian refugees living in exile at that time. We asked them to draw their ground plans, the ground plan of their homes that they left behind in Syria. Many of these participants, they owned those houses, and most of them, they have no access to these houses anymore, and probably they will never have the chance to return in recent future or near future. The details and the text and the illustration that was drawing with those houses, they really varied and they are really different from one person to other person. Some of them really focused on drawing really detailed, kind of like detailed illustrations of furniture they used to have in the house, or plants, or specific dynamics happenings between families, really personal stories. And some of them focused on drawing the location of the house, because for them that was most important and the most significant about the house. Some of them really draw kind of like a time lapse between what was the house situation before 2011 and what happened after 2011. So over the years we experimented, of course we started in 2014, and we experimented in different ways and methods and forms of presentation to present this collection. Every time we present new drawings. And at Amman Design Week now at the hangar, we presented the new version. It's a table where you find a publication where all those drawings are published in, with the personal stories about each house, the details about each house, some quotes of the people some of the translation of the quotes that are existing on the drawings. Some pictures. We also ask them if they have still some pictures of these houses, so we also publish them. We also have a video piece and 3D models. After spending time and having those 2D drawings, we decided that maybe it's also a good idea to interview the participant during the drawing of these maps. So here, for example, we have the drawing of Maher. He's a Syrian refugee living in the Netherlands at the moment. We asked him to tell us the story about how he and his family survived living in the house during a raid on his city, Nebek, close to Homs. It took us 3 days actually to it went through 3 days. First he memorized the house, and then it took him time to recall all his memory about what's happened, what are the important information that he wants to tell us. So it's actually this process. It went from trying to recall the memory of the house and how he looks like into a form of documentation for himself about what's really happened. So he was remembering by drawing, because it was also some things he completely forgot. So it was, and he was really keen on doing it because he thought that this is the only way he can document the story for his newly born child. So here you see the drawing of the house, and here kind of showing what's really changed in the house, the structure of the house.
We wanted to share a little bit of the research that we did behind this project, and what we were experimenting with is how you locate memories inside architectural space, and this is what we found really interesting to explore. We also looked at how other professions use drawing, like psychologists or educational therapists, and also specialists who participate in memory competitions use a kind of technique called memory palace. And maybe some of you have heard about that, but that is about, it has to do with the way that you use an architectural space that's familiar to you to place or insert certain things that you would like to remember, and you are easily able to recall those memories by traveling back in your mind to an architectural place. This is an example, you don't see it so well, but it's called Temple of Time, and it is an educational diagram, and it's made by a lady called Emma Willard in 1846, and it's an early example of something called a memory palace. So here she's actually putting details of, for example, all the poets in history, which one needs to remember as a student at school. And she's actually drawing that into an architectural space in order to make it an aid to remember those poets or whatever you need to remember at school. So as another source of inspiration for this project, we also considered the role of the archaeologist who needs to use ancient ruins and ancient ruin sites, which are quite incomplete, to use them as evidence to create an impression of what happened hundreds and thousands of years ago. So what we found interesting is that 3D printing is often used by archaeologists as a tool or an aid to reproduce bits and pieces and fragments and actually be able to reconstruct them and imagine what a site or what a place or what an event actually looked like. Yeah, we also considered 3D printing to be quite interesting because sometimes it also has a political agenda in mind and in the way that it's used. Here is an example of two different approaches that you could take. One of them on the left, you see the reconstruction of the Arch of Triumph, which was one of the arches at Palmyra in Syria, which was, as most of you probably know, destroyed by ISIS in 2015. And this is actually a project which was funded by UNESCO and the EU, and it is a kind of reconstruction of this arch and a sort of political statement in terms of, we will not succumb to terrorism and so on. And this act of reconstructing a site functions as, well, we consider it also quite problematic. But it has a real, the idea of constructing has a political agenda behind it. On the other side, something used for quite a different purpose is the artist Noura Al-Badri, and she made 3D scans of the bust of Nefertiti, which is currently at a museum in Berlin. And the data from the 3D scan that she made, it was made open source. And the idea of reproducing the bust of Nefertiti was more as an activistic, kind of anti-colonial statement. And the bust has since then been remade and been showed in Cairo. So these are two ways in which reconstructing something and showing it again have quite different agendas and quite different purposes.
So for the Groundplan drawings project and for this presentation here at Amman Design Week, we decided to reproduce some of the drawings into 3D models again. And for that purpose, we worked with an architect, and here we faced like very interesting problems, like how to not changing or transforming 2D drawings into 3D, but then you discover that the spaces or the measurement of the imagined or remembered space is completely not accurate architectural-wise. So the architects were like kind of struggling with us and saying like, no, it can't be. You cannot have this room is not correct. Or so for us it was like kind of a struggle to work with them and to push them to stay loyal to the original drawing, because for us we wanted to recreate a 3D, how to say, like translation to this kind of a space, how those people remember it, because it's so personal, because they draw it in this way, because this is how they remember the space. So often you see those models. So this is one of, for example, this is the house of Maher again, and it was very important in this place that while he remembering the drawings, he completely neglected few rooms. So those rooms were completely empty. He didn't talk about them, and he talked about those 2 rooms in the middle where the whole family moved into during those kind of 2 months where they stayed in the house. So in the close-up image, so this is one of the room where they stayed in, and it was before used as a storage place, so it was not really a bedroom. So they needed to put a few mattresses in. So we only put the furniture or the important element that he mentioned in his stories, such as also the electricity sockets, where they used to hide the most valuable stuff in them, like or object like medicine, gold, or money. That was very important to discover with Maher again the role of the architectural space in those kind of times, and how the rest of the house, like the garden or the salon where you receive guests, were completely neglected and not important in his story. So the model became a kind of a testimony of the memory of the house, and not necessarily a representation of the real house in space. This is another house of Omar and Marwa, and the 3D model represents a moment in time. It's an event where you see the furniture are upside down, and we wanted to experiment with audio, telling the story about what's really happened at this moment in time, and guide you through letters, through those, through Omar like entering the house again after events that happened there, violent events, and then telling the story through those moments in time where he went through each rooms. It was quite an experiment for us also to work with audio as well, because we needed to translate the interview again or script it into kind of like narration. We narrated again, we translated it into. It was first made in Arabic, and then we translated to English, and then from English to Arabic again. So it was really was an important experiment for us. So, in a way, we find this exhibit or this. We are a moment in time that we are trying to see how we could actually look again at this collection we have, how we could document those stories and use them again to retell the stories of the personal narrative of what's happened to those refugees, and not really the mainstream media story. That's it, actually. Right?
Yeah, we plan to continue with the project from now on. We're really happy that we could actually make a kind of evolution of what we were doing and experimenting with audio in relation to the models and how you tell the story and different methods of telling the story. And we'd love for other people to participate actually in the GroundPlan Drawings project. It's something that I think we should all do, no matter where we come from, is try and do this experiment with architecture and memory and see what it does for you. I think it's quite a great experience. So we'd like to also have open this up as an invitation to you guys. If you know anybody who would like to participate, or you yourself would like to participate in the project, please feel free to contact us, and we have lots more information about all of our projects on our website and on Instagram, of course. Okay, I think that's all. Thank you very much, guys.
what do we...
I was just wondering, what do you plan to do with all these mappings that you then create based on the memories of people? Like, do you exhibit them?
They're at the moment here in the exhibition, so you could have a look. So yes, we exhibit them. We exhibited them already in many places. But for us, it was like it's important. Maybe this is something we need to address. Like we think that every designer or artist should also start his own collections of stories. So actually, the project started from this idea that we wanted to collect those stories by drawing, making people draw their memories. So what's maybe the purpose? I don't know, maybe other people in 10 years, they will use them to discover other stories or other narratives. So we make them actually available. This is why we publish them.
It's also interesting for us to think about communities in the diaspora like we did in the archival project that we worked on in the States. So like, for example, we are in contact with an organization now in Amsterdam that works with Syrian refugees there. And it's also like a nice way for us to get in touch with what's happening in these communities by inviting people to draw and to do this exercise. And it is also quite a personal thing, of course, and maybe quite traumatic, but it's a way of also starting a conversation and another way of sort of interviewing and speaking out, speaking to people and yeah, starting a kind of dialogue.
To ask why you think as designers it's important to archive or excavate all these personal narratives or alternative narratives and archiving them later. Maybe you can talk a little bit more because that's the thread I see through the work.
Well, we have a personal experience we work a lot with archives, and our experience working with the Alex Yanaf archive was kind of, for us, and open our minds about how important actually to document those personal stories. I think as designers we could contribute also to this kind of how to say to collect those stories, look at it from a different way. We've been working a lot with those with refugee groups, not only refugees but also sans-papiers like the Boudoun, and those people are very sensitive when it comes to standard interviews. So we were always pushed to create different ways to interview them and document what they have to say. I think designers could also give new ideas or creative ideas to how to deal with those people and how to create a conversation with them, create something new with them instead of like question, answer, and then I didn't answer the question of archive, but I think visual archive now and digital archive, it's very important. We could also analyze this archive, and this is what we're doing for now. For example, now we are working with the Syrian archive. It's an organization based in Berlin where they document all video material coming from Syria. So they play the role of the archives and they verify if the videos are truth or not from a journalistic point of view. But what we do is we analyze it from an image perspective, image production, an image producer point of view, what these images means, what's the future of those images if they are used as evidence in courts, for example. how we store them, how we reuse them again. So I think designers are not just creative makers of something new. We could also play the role of the analysis, the visual analysis, and by that we could also collect our own material, so we could narrate them again and tell a different perspective. So it's not just archiving, collecting, and hiding somewhere. It's just collect and use it to tell another narration, or to narrate another perspective to the story. That is more our role.
Yeah, I agree. And also, many of the projects that we've worked on since 2011, and we've worked on publications about media imagery related to activism, and many of these things, of this material, has actually disappeared since. So we were really happy that we at least were able to save some bits and pieces and also write about them and publish texts about things that we see and that we notice, and also we think it's important and have a hunch about why these things are important. So yeah, it's also just a word of encouragement, like if you notice things that are happening around you that you think are really valuable to connect and to store and to preserve, then do it, because it could be really valuable later on.
We told you yesterday, we just saw a great example at the MAG exhibition. They have those Black Panther movie. I don't know if you guys saw it, but you should see it. It's really like, for us, it's more valuable documentation of the Black Panther movement than the documentation you see made by a historian or politician, because it's made by an artist, by a French documentary maker. So she had her kind of ideas, and the way how she edited the story, the way how she interviewed those people was completely, inspiring. So you should see this movie.
Thank you. I think we need